Chapter 3 of American Notes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tim Bulkley of BigBible.org. American Notes by Rudyard Kipling. Chapter 3. American Salmon. The race is neither to the swift nor the battle to the strong, but time and chance cometh to all. I have lived. The American continent may now sink under the sea, for I have taken the best that it yields, and the best was neither dollars, love, nor real estate. Here now, gentlemen of the Punjab Fishing Club, who whip the reaches of the Tavy, and you who painfully import trout over to Octamund, I will tell you how Old Man California and I went fishing, and you shall envy. We returned from the Dalles to Portland by the way we had come, the steamer stopping en route to pick up a night's catch of one of the salmon wheels on the river, and to deliver it at a cannery downstream. When the proprietor of the wheel announced that his take was 2,230 pounds weight of fish, and not a heavy catch neither, I thought he lied. But he sent the boxes aboard, and I counted the salmon by the 100. Huge 50-pounders, hardly dead, scores of 20 and 30-pounders, and a host of smaller fish. They were all Chinook salmon, as distinguished from the steelhead and the silver side. That is to say, they were royal salmon, and California and I dropped a tear over them, as monarchs who deserved a better fate. But the lust of slaughter entered into our souls, and we talked fish and forgot the mountain scenery that had so moved us the day before. The steamer halted at a rude warehouse built on piles in a lonely reach of the river, and sent in the fish. I followed them up a scale-strewn, fishy incline that led to the cannery. The crazy building was quivering with the machinery on its floors, and a glittering bank of tin scraps 20 feet high showed where the waste was thrown after the cans had been punched. Only Chinamen were employed in the work, and they looked like blood-besmeared yellow devils as they crossed the rifts of sunlight that lay upon the floor. When our consignment arrived, the rough wooden boxes broke of themselves as they were dumped down under a jet of water, and the salmon burst out in a stream of quicksilver. A Chinaman jerked up a 20-pounder, beheaded it, and detailed it in 2 swift strokes of a knife, flicked out its internal arrangements with a third, and case it into a blood-dyed tank. The headless fish leaped from under his hands as though they were facing a rapid. Other Chinamen pulled them from the vat and thrust them under a thing like a chaff-cutter, which, descending, hewed them into unseemly red gobbets, fit for the can. More Chinamen, with yellow crooked fingers, jammed the stuff into the cans, which slid down some marvellous machine forthwith, soldering their own tops as they passed. Each can was hastily tested for flaws, and then sunk with 100 companions into a vat of boiling water, there to be half-cooked for a few minutes. The cans bulged slightly after the operation, and were therefore slidden along by the trolleyful to men with needles and soldering irons, who vented them and soldered the aperture. Except for the label, the finest Columbia salmon were ready for the market. I was impressed, not so much with the speed of the manufacture as the character of the factory. Inside, on a floor 90 by 40, the most civilized and murderous of machinery. Outside, 3 footsteps, the thick-growing pines and the immense solitude of the hills. Our steamer only stayed 20 minutes at that place, but I counted 240 finished cans made from the catch of the previous night ere I left the slippery, blood-stained, scale-spangled, oily floors and the offal-smeared Chinamen. We reached Portland, California and I crying for salmon, and a real estate man, to whom we had been entrusted by an insurance man, met us in the street, saying that 15 miles away across the country we should come upon a place called Clackamas, where we might perchance find what we desired. And California, his coat-tails flying in the wind, ran to a livery stable and chartered a wagon and team forthwith. I could push the wagon about with one hand, so light was its structure. The team was purely American. that is to say, almost human in its intelligence and docility. Someone said that the roads were not good on the way to Clackamas, and warned us against smashing the springs. Portland, who had watched the preparations, finally reckoned he'd come along too. Under the heavenly skies, we three companions of a day set forth, California carefully lashing our rods into the carriage, and the bystanders overwhelming us with directions as to the sawmills we were to pass, the ferries we were to cross, and the signposts we were to seek signs from. Half a mile from this city of 50,000 souls, we struck, and this must be taken literally, a plank road that would have been a disgrace to an Irish village. Then 6 miles of macadamized road showed us that the team could move. A railway ran between us and the banks of the Willamette, and another above us through the mountains. All the land was dotted with small townships, and the roads were full of farmers in their town wagons, bunches of tow-haired, boggle-eyed urchins sitting in the hay behind. The men generally looked like loafers, but their women were all well dressed. Brown braiding on a tailor-made jacket does not, however, consort with hay wagons. Then we struck into the woods along what California called a Camino Reale, a good road, and Portland a fair track. It wound in and out among fire-blackened stumps under pine trees, along the corners of log fences, through hollows, which must be hopeless marsh in the winter, and up absurd gradients, but nowhere throughout its length did I see any evidence of road-making. There was a track. You couldn't well get off it, and it was all you could do to stay on it. The dust lay a foot thick in blind ruts, and under the dust we found bits of planking and bundles of brushwood that sent the wagon bounding into the air. The journey in itself was a delight. Sometimes we crashed through bracken. Anon, where the blackberries grew rankest, we found a lovely little cemetery, the wooden rails all awry, and the pitiful stumpy headstones nodding drunkenly at the soft green mullions. Then, with oaths and the sound of rent underwood, a yoke of mighty bulls would swing down a skid road, hauling a 40-foot log along a rudely made slide. A valley full of wheat and cherry trees succeeded, and, halting at a house, we bought 10-pound weight of luscious black cherries for something less than a rupee, and got a drink of icy cold water for nothing, while the untended team browsed sagaciously by the roadside. Once we found a wayside camp of horse dealers lounging by a pool, ready for a sale or a swap, and once 2 sun-tanned youngsters shot down a hill on Indian ponies, their full creels banging from the high-pommelled saddle. They had been fishing, and were our brethren therefore. We shouted aloud in chorus to scare a wild cat. We squabbled over the reasons that had led a snake to cross the road. We heaved bits of bark at a venturesome chipmunk, who was really the little grey squirrel of India, and had come to call on me. We lost our way. We got the wagon so beautifully fixed on a cud-bound road that we had to tie the 2 hind wheels to get it down. Above all, California told tales of Nevada and Arizona, of lonely nights spent out prospecting, the slaughter of deer and the chase of men, of woman, lovely woman, who is a firebrand in a western city and leads to the popping of pistols, and of the sudden changes and chances of fortune, who delights in making the miner or the lumberman a quadruplicate millionaire and in busting the railroad king. That was a day to be remembered, and it had only begun when we drew rein at a tiny farmhouse on the banks of the Clackamas and sought horse feed and lodging, ere we hastened to the river that broke over a weir not a quarter of a mile away. Imagine a stream 70 yards broad, divided by a pebbly island, running over seductive riffles and swirling into deep, quiet pools, where the good salmon goes to smoke his pipe after meals. Get such a stream amid fields of breast-high crops, surrounded by hills of pines. Throw in where you please quiet water, long fenced meadows, and 100-foot bluff just to keep the scenery from growing too monotonous, and you will get some faint notion of the Clackamas. The weir had been erected to pen the Chinook salmon from going further upstream. We could see